chemical tests on pottery showed that around about 7,000 years ago, beer was brewed in Iran. But what about today? What about brewing in Africa? Of course, it's dominated by one company, which we don't need to mention, but I will anyway. It's SAB Miller. But that is changing. Microbreweries are springing up all over the place. And in fact, I was in a gastro pub in Ilovo in Johannesburg 2 weeks ago. It was called Griffin, actually, and they gave me this whole menu of beers. There's about 20 different beers, all fairly glamorously priced, I must admit, but nonetheless, they look fantastic. Let's talk about microbrewing and the future of brewing in Africa now with, in the studio with me in Cape Town, Russ Mayer, the head of sales and marketing at Boston Breweries, and in the Power Lunch Johannesburg studio is Jonathan Nell, the owner of the imaginatively named Three Skulls Brew Works. Maybe I can start with you, Jonathan. The challenge to SAB Miller is not in the mass market, of course, is it? It's in the growing sort of middle class market where people want something slightly different, I suppose.
Absolutely. I think my biggest customer is a 25 to 35-year-old male and female, probably 50-50. Affluent, has a good expendable income and wants something different.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see if that is confirmed by Russ in Cape Town. Russ, Boston, I actually work at the Artscape Theatre on a radio show, and the little pub next door to it, not that I go there very often, has a Boston a tap. Are you sort of penetrating the market?
That's right. I mean, Boston Breweries has been around for about 12 years already. So, you know, we've made really good inroads into the brewing community as a producer as well as a company that sells brands on the market. We find that the trends are obviously in our favor right now. The consumer's looking for something different, something with a lot more variety than they were accustomed to in the past. And that obviously opens doors for us to be able to get creative, imaginative on our brews.
There seem to be coming out. There seem to be new brands almost every month or so coming out, and a new brewery that comes along. Is it profitable?
It's a very good question. You know, the profitability on microbrewing is at best a challenge. I think what we'll find in the future is that the guys would do a lot better working together to try and grow their market. We find that through collaboration, particularly in the form of contract brewing, you know, success has been achieved, and certainly the industry is growing by guys standing together, working together to try and achieve the growth.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, Jonathan, what about the fragmentation of the business and the case for consolidation? I mean, would you at Three Skulls get together with something like Boston and all get together and maybe start to have your own distribution, for example, opening up a chain of craft beer pubs, for example?
Well, I think the groundwork has been laid now. A couple of people up here in Joburg are doing that exact thing. They're bringing brands up from Cape Town. They're distributing up here in Joburg. So you'll see from last year, probably you could only get about 4 or 5 craft beer brands in Johannesburg. Now, thanks to a couple of guys up here, you can now get close to 20 or 30. You know, and as Russ said, you know, getting together is one of the things we do really well. There's a lot of collaboration between the breweries. We make a lot of interesting, different beer. We work together. All the festivals we go to, the guys know each other very well. So it's quite a small market. I mean, if you think realistically about our share, the last time I checked, we were probably about 0.03 or 0.05% of the entire market. So we're very, very small. But what we do well is we make noise in the market and people notice us. So although we're fragmented and we are very small, people notice what we're doing.
But I still get the impression that it's just a hobby, you know. When I speak to the chap whose name briefly escapes me, who owns Jack Black, for example, and it's quite a big craft, one of the sort of pioneers of the craft industry, I suppose. I still get the impression that you lot are doing it for fun.
Fair enough. I think just because we work in beer, I mean, it is fun. And I'm not sure how many people have been on the station in a t-shirt and a brown jacket. But I mean, what we do at the end of the day is we make beer. And beer is a nice thing to do at the end of the day. We are in it to make money. I mean, you're not doing this because it is only fun, but the margins are there if you do it right. And I mean, you can speak to Russ about it. What they do very well is they brew other people's beer for them, and that does very well for them. You know, their profits are obviously a lot higher than mine, where what I do is I make beer, I clean the floor, I package the bottle, I take the label off, I deliver the beer. It's a very different model. So, you know, we're on two very different ends of the market. Me being quite small and very small and very hands-on. Russ being a much bigger guy with a much bigger brewery who makes a lot of different brands and a lot of beer for other people. So even though we're still small, And even though it is still fun, I think what we do is we're growing and we're making noise in the market. People are noticing us. The brands are getting more interesting, and people are asking for more interesting beer. You just need to have a look at the marketing that's coming out of the big companies. It's not very interesting because the brands have been basically the same for 100 years.
Well, let's talk about now the reaction of the big companies. Obviously, SAP Miller in South Africa is the one that we think about. They're also bringing out their own craft beers, aren't they? I mean, if you look at the United States of America, which is pioneering craft beer production, it's also starting to be penetrated a bit by the big companies, I think.
Certainly, I mean, the growth in the sector, in that particular sector, the beer category, it demands attention. So certainly the bigger guys are looking at ways of infiltrating the market, trying to get different beers out there, which is great. The more beer that is on offer, the bigger the industry will grow. We need people to stand and support it. So if it comes from the bigger guy or the smaller guy, all better for the craft beer market, the microbrewing industry.
When I go to a pub, which I do occasionally, the first thing I do is I say a black label, please, just because I'm old and there's a lot of inertia there. But I haven't yet sort of really been challenged by somebody saying, actually, don't have a black label, have a Three Skulls or a Boston. Yeah. Is there a barrier that you have to get over, that inertia barrier? Yeah,
there certainly is, Lindsay. What we need to do is, within the craft beer industry, the microbrewing industry, education is a massive part of what we should be doing, to try and overcome the barriers, the challenges that we face. We need to be able to ensure that our product crosses as many lips as possible, but at the same token, we need to be able to educate the consumer in what microbrewing is trying to achieve, and that is trying to achieve a different offering, a product offering that is on the natural side, as little or no preservative as possible, and that process is something that we need to do quite aggressively, and to be able to grow the market in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Jonathan, what about you? You're much smaller, as you said, than Russ's operation down here. How do you market it? How do you get people to know? Do you knock on doors and you go to pubs like the Griffin that I was talking to you about, and just give them samples? Because what I'm sort of leading to here is that South Africa is one market that really needs, that has got so much potential because of a growing middle class and the need for more interesting products. But the rest of Africa is on your doorstep. Absolutely.
Look, I think the biggest problem, and Russ alluded to it, is really the education of the customer and the consumer. So when I talk about the customer, it really is, if you talk to Joe, who owns Joe's Bar, he's used to getting all his equipment for free from SAB. He's used to getting rebates. He's used to getting free stock. He's used to sending back stuff when there was the cap didn't fit properly or the label peeled off. Those things are very difficult for a small microbrewer like me to do, to put a lot of hard equipment into places so that the guy can sell the beer. So, there's a lot of barriers for us just by getting into the outlet. So what a lot of guys do is we go into bottles, we put the bottles in, and like you say, we go and we drop them off and we say, hi, my name is Jonathan from Three Skulls. I have these lovely beers. Here are the bottles and the labels. Would you mind putting them in your bar? And 9 times out of 10 the guys go for it because they want something new. And you'll find that what's happening now, albeit slowly, in Joburg, it's already doing quite well in Cape Town, is that a lot of bars are not taking the big guys anymore. So you're not getting your Heineken tap and your Black Label tap sitting next to a Three Skulls and a Boston. You're only getting a Three Skulls and a Boston. And they're choosing us over them.
Very good. Finally, let's sort of contextualise this and summarise this. The future of microbrewing in South Africa and Africa is obviously going to grow with as the economy grows. Is it something you see eventually challenging the big boys, or is it going to stay as it is now, almost a cottage industry?
Well, I think the important thing is for us to just grow within ourselves. A lot of the bigger or smaller companies, who basically grow too fast for their own good, which often leads to implosion. So I think what we need to do is just take the market as it's coming, encourage as much growth as possible, and get beer across lips. That's our